have never taken any performance-enhancing drug in connection with your cycling career.
Correct.
And that would include any substance that's ever been banned. Is that fair to say?
Correct.
In 2004, an insurance company, SCA, refuses to pay Armstrong millions in bonus money amid reports of him doping. Armstrong sues them.
It was from a syringe mark.
And soon his former teammates,
It's an injectable.
friends,
I would prefer not to be here at the deposition, yes.
and Armstrong himself are testifying under oath before lawyers.
It affirmatively did not take place.
How could it have taken place when I've never taken performance-enhancing drugs?
Okay.
How could that have happened?
That was my point. It's not just simply you don't recall.
How many times do I have to say it?
I'm just trying to make sure your testimony is clear.
The case threatens to expose Armstrong's doping program, and he goes to great lengths to try to keep his secrets from being revealed. When Betsy Andreu arrives for her deposition, conducted by SCA attorney Jeffrey Tillotson, she's shocked to see Armstrong in the room.
Betsy immediately jumps up and goes outside. We follow her, I do, and she is freaked out. She's like, oh my God, he's here. Why is he here?
Armstrong sits across from Andreu during her entire testimony.
What was it that your email to Mr. Armstrong said?
Andreu refuses to be intimidated by his presence.
I said you are very disrespectful to people. You treat people like Frankie is a friend of yours. He's not an employee. We don't have to put up with it.
Andreu drops a bombshell in her testimony. When she recounts a conversation she says she heard Armstrong have in 1996 with the doctor who treated his cancer.
And then came the question, have you ever taken any performance-enhancing drugs? And Lance said yes. The doctor said, what were they? And he said, EPO, growth hormone, cortisone, steroids, and testosterone.
He's sitting at the edge of the table staring at her. You know, if he had mind control, he probably would have stopped her heart.
Despite the damning testimony, Armstrong is later awarded $7.5 million.
Just wanted the truth out. And this is a huge fraud in the history of sport. Shouldn't it be revealed? Shouldn't the truth be told? Shouldn't the truth matter?
Once again, Armstrong's challengers are left in the dust. And the world watches in awe as Armstrong pushes himself even further at the 2005 Tour de France.
Lance Armstrong has pedaled his way to an unprecedented 7th straight Tour de France victory.
Still, doping accusations continue to haunt the sports legend. And in his latest moment of triumph, Armstrong thumbs his nose at his detractors.
The last thing I'll say for the people that don't believe in cycling, the cynics and the skeptics, I'm sorry for you. I'm sorry you can't dream big, and I'm sorry you don't believe in miracles.
He knew that people knew he was doping. He knew that people were basically onto him and couldn't prove it, and he basically just threw it back in everybody's face.
Then, at the top of his game, he retires.
It's time for me to stop and go home and be a full-time dad.
The following year, his friend and former protege, Floyd Landis, picks up the torch.
If anyone was going to fill his shoes and become the next great American cyclist, it was going to be Floyd Landis.
Since joining the U.S. Postal Team, Landis trained closely with Armstrong and helped him win 3 Tour de France titles. According to Landis, his time with Armstrong is also spent in the dark world of doping.
He first was sort of indoctrinated into the doping program during the sort of warm-up race before the Tour de France.
When he joined Lance Armstrong, he became something else. He was really inside all of the drug use.
And in 2006, Landis continues the American winning streak and captures the yellow jersey.
American Floyd Landis is celebrating his big victory today.
I'll be happy about this for a long time.
Now, it's Landis's turn on top. And like Armstrong before him, he's convinced they'll never catch his doping. But he's wrong.
After his breathtaking win in the Tour de France, American Floyd Landis has tested positive for unusually high levels of testosterone.
Landis desperately fights back against the charge.
I would like to leave absolutely clear that I am not in any doping process.
But when it comes to convincing denials, Floyd Landis is no Lance Armstrong.
Credit that the levels I have had during the tour and all my career are absolutely natural and produced by my own organism.
The cycling community is not convinced, and the UCI strips him of his title. He's banned from cycling for 2 years.
In the world of cycling, when you test positive, they throw you out like garbage. You were nothing.
The alienated cyclist is haunted by his failed drug test.
The world finds out that you have a positive drug test, it's a disaster.
Floyd Landis fought his case for many years, took his 2-year suspension, came back in the sport, and couldn't get a job on the highest levels of cycling.
Not even with his old friend Lance Armstrong, who 3 years into his self-imposed retirement makes a startling announcement on the Livestrong website.
After long talks with my kids, the rest of my family, close group of friends, I have decided to return to professional cycling in 2009.
Armstrong says Landis threatens to go public with doping accusations unless he gets a job with Armstrong's new team, something Landis denies. Regardless, Armstrong turns his back on his old friend.
Lance's shunning of Floyd was one of the worst mistakes he could have made. I think that was the moment where Floyd basically said, okay, the heck with it.
4 years after his brief shining moment on top, Floyd Landis enters a Beverly Hills restaurant to meet with a cycling official. Landis sets an audio recorder on the table, presses record, and shatters the sport's code of silence. Landis unburdens himself of what he says are years of lies about doping on the U.S. Postal Team.
Big props to Floyd Landis for finally coming out and telling the truth.
Landis doesn't name Lance Armstrong. Not yet. But the story he reveals lights the match for the firestorm that will soon envelop Armstrong.
Floyd said, well, if you really want to know what's going on, I can tell you.
Word of Landis's claims reaches Federal Food and Drug Administration agents who meet with the disgraced cyclist. Landis tells them about doping and cycling, and this time he talks specifically about Lance Armstrong.
Floyd Landis knew where all the bodies were buried.
The FDA launches a full investigation into Landis's allegations. At issue is whether or not the U.S. Postal Team under Armstrong is guilty of fraud by engaging in doping and possibly trafficking banned substances, all while under contract with a federal sponsor, the U.S. Postal Service.
A grand jury had convened in Los Angeles, and Lance was in the crosshairs.
Armstrong hits back.
We have nothing to hide. We have nothing to run from.
And he hits back especially hard at Landis.
This is a man that wrote a book for profit that had a completely different version.
February 2012. 2 years after the federal investigation into Armstrong begins, it's suddenly dropped, without explanation. In a statement, Armstrong calls it the right decision.
When the federal investigation closed, I think Armstrong justifiably felt like he dodged a bullet.
But as soon as the feds step down, another investigation steps up under Travis Tigert, head of the United States Anti-Doping Agency, or USADA.
No athlete should be put in the situation where to achieve their dreams they have to resort to dangerous cheating.
Though USADA is without authority in legal or criminal matters, Tigert can ban athletes from sanctioned sports for doping for years or even life. He approaches Armstrong's former teammates, including Tyler Hamilton, and they start talking.
The people that were bound to this code of silence, they basically came forward and the whole thing blew open.
11 Armstrong teammates testify against him, including 6 active riders who are given 6-month suspensions for their own doping. The powerful Armstrong machine is in high defense mode.
After he passed every single test that was administered and didn't fail a one, and they couldn't prove him guilty, they've now asked him to prove himself innocent.
All I can say is that Lance Armstrong is defiant, and he will always be defiant.
But the tide is turning. The opportunity to come clean is just too appealing for some who were once in Armstrong's inner circle.
It was just a massive, massive weight off my shoulders, and it felt so good that, you know, immediately I knew my life had changed. I knew the right direction I was going to go, and I wanted to scream it from the top of my lungs at that time.
In October of 2012, USADA publicly issues a full report, and it reveals what they say is Armstrong's secret world.
This was the game changer. This is what took it from being you could believe one side or the other still.
1,000 pages lay out incident after incident of doping on the U.S. Postal Cycling Team. Names, dates, and locations, all in great detail. It's a scathing assessment of the man USADA paints as the ringleader, Lance Armstrong.
I think it proves beyond any doubt. Unfortunately, the U.S. Postal Service's pro cycling team, including Lance Armstrong, ran the most sophisticated, professionalized, and successful drug program that we've ever seen.
Lance Armstrong is the greatest cheater in all of cycling's history. Obviously, not only by the number of tours he had won and by his success, but by the number of people he was able to co-opt into this cycle of deceit.
I always thought the truth would come out because it's just too big. But I never imagined it would be what it is, because we were so surprised by so much of it ourselves. Just the magnitude it's staggering. Staggering.
Just 1 week after the USADA report is released, Armstrong speaks at his Livestrong Foundation's 15th anniversary.
It's been a difficult couple of weeks for me, for my family, for my friends, for this foundation.
On that day, Tyler Hamilton saw a changed man.
I know I'm well enough. I could see he's broken. He's a broken man. I mean, I could just tell by his voice.
As the scandal grows, day by day, Armstrong's legend continues to crumble.